Hello everybody, it's Francesco Ganora here and I have this new little video. I'm gonna show you something about testing, Mule testing with MUnit. And MUnit is a very exciting testing suite. Just got into that. Um, and a very common type of testing, both for unit testing and for integration testing, is to set an input payload, execute a flow, the flow under test, and then using an assert step to check the output payload. The set payload and assert use one-line fields to where we can put a mel expression to assign the payload or to specify the payload, the expected payload, and that's a little problem because sometimes we want to use larger payload, both for input and for output. Sometimes you know, something that spans many lines. So for example, we're going to look at testing this very simple flow called JSON to CSV. These accept an HTTP post request with URL JSON dash to dash CSV. Then it converts and it expects a JSON document in the request body. Then it will use a JSON to object transformer to convert this JSON object to a hash map Java object. And then instead of using data weaver in this simple example flow, I'll just use ML expression transformer. With this ML expression transformer, it will iterate over the hash map and then build a simple CSV output. So I'll show you how it works. So I run this, deploy this project, and then I go to Postman. Yeah, as you can see, there are already green check marks next to the transformer, these two transformer and this expression component. That means this has already been tested, obviously, because I prepared for this video. So this deployed, I go to Postman. What I want to submit is what this simple flow expects is a JSON document in this form. So it has a list of countries, an array of countries, and then each array element is an object with name of the country and the capital of the country. So what the flow produces output is something like this. So it takes the capital and then writes comma and the country and then a new line and then so forth for the other elements. So if I execute it, I can get this result. It works. So I can double check by checking, putting instead of Italy, Italia, and then as you can see, this is actually produces the expected result. Let's put back Italy. So now I want to automate this, and so what I do is to create an MUnit test suite. So by choosing new MUnit test, I will call it simple transformations tests. Okay. For now I just add a test for into this test suite just for this one flow JSON to CSV, and there I get the test. We can see also an XML has the MUnit configuration, default MUnit configuration, has the Spring Beans importing Spring Bean importing the XML Mule configuration file for containing the test, the Mule flows that we need to test. That is, of course, simple transformation.xml. And then a skeleton of the test with a flow reference. So what we want to do is to use set payload to assign the input payload and to use assert equals to check the output payload. So let's rename it. Set input payload and check output payload. So here I'm gonna, as I told you, well, what you normally see with set payload components in Mule, you have only one line for value. That's a practical issue because we don't have an extended bigger field. We cannot enlarge this into a text field, a bigger text field, a multi-line text field. So if I try to copy and paste this multi-line string from my manual test in Postman, and I try to put quotes and then paste this, yeah, you see it doesn't work because it only pastes the first line. So okay, there's no way for me to paste the whole thing. So what I can do, of course, is to put everything in one line. So I've done it in this editor, so I can copy this same document, again JSON document, but only in one line. I paste it here, and this is gonna work because it's on one line. Then when I assert the output payload, I put the actual value with payload in the null expression. And here I would have to set this payload here, but again, I cannot have a multi-line value. So what I would need to do is to create a one-line expression where the new lines are represented by \n escape sequences like this. So I have, instead of the multi-line text, this equivalent. I save, then I put test failure message, so output payload not as expected. So now I will try to run this test suite. Sorry, I didn't. I forgot to stop the engine here. So because of my earlier test, manual test. So let's run again. So okay. So the test succeeds, and we can see that the output payload, which is this with the new line at the end, matched what we have here in this MEL expression. Of course, this can still work with this size of payloads, but if you want to run a unit test or integration test with much bigger payloads, it becomes really inconvenient to put the whole payload into one line. So what can we do? We'd like to, we can use a trick which uses the a component called Parse Template. Parse Template is something that can set a payload and uses as a template where we can dynamically expand mel expression within this template. So if we insert this, and this is a test, but we can still use these components even in a test. So we have to set a location which contains the template. In this case, the template doesn't have any dynamic parts, but it's still just the input payload that we want to submit. So I've already prepared it here. So the input payload is into this file called JSON to CSV test input.json, and it contains the same that I have submitted in Postman. I want to read this, and this doesn't contain dynamic mel expression, but that's okay. So I want to specify this file to load as payload. So I remove the set payload, and instead I load the file. So the file is at src .test /test resources, and then these JSON to CSV test input.json. Let's check it. src /test/resources /JSON to CSV test input.json. That looks okay. So instead of using set payload, we use this parse template to populate the input payload. Let's see if it works. Yes. So this loaded the payload from this file, input file, and it can be any size, any number of lines that you want. So let's see what we can do about the checking the output payload to replace this. Of course, here we cannot replace the assert step. We had the assert step needs to stay there. So we need to populate something that contains the multi-line expected output. That is this CSV output. What we can do is to use or misuse a message enricher scope. So if we insert here a message enricher, that's also possible, otherwise also in this test flow, we can then put the template, the parse template, into the message enricher. This parse template would read the expected output, which is here in this file JSON to CSV test output.txt, and populate the payload. And then we can within the message enricher, we can assign this payload populated by the parse template into flow variables. And once we have into a flow variable, we can use it in the assert here in the assert step. So what I can copy this path into the parse template within the message enricher. So I assign the output file. The path of the output file is output.txt. And then I need to assign this output, which would be the payload of the flow step contained within the message enricher. So I assign this internal payload to a flow variable. So flow vars, I can call this flow variable expected output, expected payload. So let's call it expected payload, and let's correct this typo. Flow vars, yeah. And then I can, once this, I use this message enrichment to populate this flow variable expected payload from the template. I then can simply assign this flow variable as expected value. So the output of the flow will produce a payload, and this payload will be compared with the contents of the flow variable expected payload, but these contents are populated via the parse template from the expected payload file. I hope that everything is clear. Let's save it and let's check. So run again. Yes, so it worked. Just to be precise, we can set here set output, set expected payload, and here we can say set input payload. Sorry, I didn't have the focus. Okay. To test that, just to have a negative test, we can change Italy to Italia in the expected payload in this file, and we run the test again. It should fail because the actual output of the flow under test will contain Italy, and instead the expected output will contain Italia, as we could see here. So we can see output payload not unexpected, Rome, Italia was expected, but the actual output had Rome, Italy. So let's change it back and save, and then rerun the test, and it should succeed again. So obviously this technique of using a message enricher containing a template step is applicable in any flow when you have to set a very large constant payload and assign to a flow variable. So I hope this is can be seen as a trick, but is actually useful because not always we have just small payloads to test with, but it's nice to be able to conveniently test with larger payloads, and then manage them as test resources here in this folder. Okay, then I'll leave you and see you at the next video. Have a great day. Bye-bye.